Hey everyone, welcome to the Meehan Mission Podcast, and my name is Cathy Meehan. Today's episode is going to be a great one. We have the remarkable and brilliant Dr. Judy Mikovits. Now, I reached out to Judy because she and I and Jim have known each other for a while, and I actually heard her on the Clay Clark podcast a couple of weeks ago, and they were actually discussing Jimmy's death and due to chemotherapy, and I totally agree with it. I know it was the chemotherapy that really ultimately took Jim's life, but I really wanted to reach out to Judy and get her input on it. And I got her input on it. Plus, I got so much more insight and just brilliance behind her mind and the corruption and everything that's been going on, really from the beginning of her career. So she takes us down this extremely fabulous, exciting path with just a wealth of knowledge. So Judy Mikovits is the author of Plague of Corruption, and she's also very involved with the Plandemic series with Mikki Willis. So we'll put the links below so you guys can catch up on those. But other than that, sit back and enjoy the interview with Dr. Judy Mikovits. Thanks, everyone. Hello, everyone, and welcome to our episode number 2. And just a little funny insight, we have decided to go with the topic or the title Meehan Mission Podcast. So I hope everyone enjoys that because, we have this mission to carry on that Jim started because, really he joined forces with a lot of people that were already in the medical community, the research community, and along the way, we met Dr. Judy Mikovits, and it was around September of 2017. We met down at a Texas Medical Freedom event, and I'm going to tell you, I left that event and I was blown away because we were just getting into the medical freedom group, and mainly it was vaccinations and the childhood vaccinations and all the fraud behind that. And I was blown away with the amount of intelligent people that were there. And I'm so thankful that we met you, Judy, back then, and that you've been alongside so many freedom warriors and fighters. And really, what I wanted to do is the other day I was listening to podcasts and I saw your clip with Clay Clark. And in that clip, you guys talked about chemotherapy and that it killed Jim. And like I said, I'm going to try not to cry. But, I believe chemotherapy is what killed Jimmy. I mean, and I look at that and, you can do all the shoulda, coulda, woulda, all of those things. And when I look back at the steps that we did, there was no real informed consent. Jimmy was scared. They kept, we were doing all these alternative things also. But when I heard you say it was the chemotherapy that killed Jim, I was like, she gets it. She knows what it is. And honestly, I'll tell you, I know this is all God's plan. It's all God's plan. And I may never know exactly what his plan is on why he took Jim, but I do deeply believe that a portion of it is that so I can join forces to help expose the cancer industry. And I mean, it's an industry, and I really wanted you to help me understand the, chemotherapy kills. And so I wanted to come to you and get your thoughts on that, on how can I process that and what do I do moving forward? I know I'm going to talk about it more later in other episodes, but I really wanted you to help me kick this off.
Yeah, thank you, Cathy.
Yeah.
You saw me that day. I was just, I was throwing things around my office there at Godspeak Church because, I had texted Jim and when I heard that he had cancer, initially it's just like, what? Why does nobody come to me? We cured that a long time ago, and that's where you get into ego, and that's not God. And then I thought, you know what? That's a guy I love let's just tap them and see how I can help now. Because
Right.
when I heard it, and I was literally on a plane, and he wrote me the most beautiful text, and I tried to read that on Clay Clark's show that day, so we will both cry. But when we met in 2017, and what really matters about all of it, and in your email I sent you today to prepare for this, I sent you two things. I sent you a patent by a company, Omnitura Genius, Genyous, and they're Chinese guys with a spelling problem. Is how they introduced themselves to me. But they'd looked at this cancer. The CEO of the company was a beautiful man who was killed literally by chemotherapy and COVID. They're the same thing. Obviously, it's killed the people that we've injured, so you never know why they died. And I'll never stop saying that. They injected cancer causing viruses, cancer causing chemicals from the environment, or they allowed you to ingest them in GMO. They shot the heavy metals through the air. They glyphosate poisoned. I believe Stephanie Seneff was at that same meeting,
Yes.
that we met. And so that's the first I learned of. I had known Stephanie Seneff since Autism One meetings. Since our paper came out in 2009, the science paper, that should have changed all of this, because all cancer, and there's no such thing as autoimmune disease. You don't attack yourself. I'm an identical twin. You can tell me and Julie from one base pair, and you don't attack yourself. So we took what was supposed to be medicine, and it really started with the Bayh-Dole Act in 1980. And this is where public-private partnerships came about. And that's what I said in Plandemic. You can't do that. And I had just walked into the National Cancer Institute as a fermentation chemist, as a botanical chemist, because we didn't have any other kind of biochemistry. The University of Virginia, where I went to school 76 through 80 for my undergraduate, did not have a biochemistry program. You had to get a degree in chemistry with a specialization in biology, and mostly all we learned in biology was the names and genesis and species of various plants, which my younger sister Karen is a botanist and ran a landscaping company. And I'm like, Karen, I don't want to do this, So we're like, and my older brother Frank Rossetti, he's not a brother in Christ, but Frank Rossetti, my mentor, was a microbiologist, and I'm a molecular biologist and biochemist now. But at the time, I was only a chemist with a specialization in biology. It was a Bachelor of Arts, because there was no science, because we didn't have the tools to study it, and it becomes critically important. So what we had done, and so I fermented, and that story is mostly in our book Ending Plague. The Plandemic is based on and that's our last book, which published in August 2021. And I'll just tell people we've been doing a book club since February of this year, of 2024. And we just, every Wednesday night, I play a few chapters from books, and I play them on purpose. And then I interrupt every now and again. I try not to interrupt as much, but I interrupt to say, no, 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 no. Here's what that means now. Because when you hear these things, it's like, as we were talking earlier, it's like reading the Bible. And I'm reading our founder's Bible, and it's like reading the Bible, because it's, as Pastor Rob McCoy, my pastor here at Godspeak Church in Thousand Oaks, says, my latest mentor in that respect, since my David was taken from me on December 1st of 2021. So, the facts remain the same, but Pastor Rob McCoy and especially Mickey Willis as well. I was pretty angry in 2022, and I went to Mickey kind of popping him everywhere, because verbally I never pop anybody other than verbally. That's what my Cherokee, I swear we're related, because my sweet grandmother's name is Hazel Willis, was Hazel Willis. My mother's name is Gloria Furr. my grandfather was the Cherokee, and my sister Julie said once, she said, Judy, granddaddy wasn't sweet. I said, I know, but he protected me from my mom when and that's how I learned to love baseball, because I'd go sit by grandpa, because usually I'd said something and my mom was so mad at me, or not said something. So it was my mom that taught us silence equals death. If you can't find a way to say something where it can be heard, find another way to say it. And so what we have to appreciate when we talk, and it's taken me so far 66 years, and it might take me a few more. I'm trying. But what we did was Genius Omnitura, who we met in 2005, and I sent you this. This is a presentation to Merck. And so what Jim Dow recognized was, and all of us on that patent I sent you from everywhere, from Canada, the British Columbia, the University of British Columbia, where I actually graduated a PhD in 911. Literally within a week of that, my student, Onesmo Mupanjo, I love him. He was great. I mean, a black man from God knows wherever, I forgot. But my lab of antiviral drug mechanisms that I led starting January 4th, 1999, until I moved to California, May 11th of 2000. I had met and married my David, and I married him October 7th of 2000. And you see, so it's perspective. And when I was 10 years old, I hid behind my grandfather because I couldn't deal with hypocrites in the Catholic school, and I got kicked out, and my mom was pretty mad, and life was already not going well. So it's like, what baseball game is on the radio, Granddaddy? And so, yeah, he was mean, but at the end of the day, I learned a lot by just listening and hiding mostly from the anger. And I never did understand the anger of my mother until after she was murdered by vaccine injury, after I was jailed. And so it's our life story, and it's history, and it's a walk that we do. But the angels that come into it, Genius Omnitura, Jim Dow recognized chemotherapy was killing people. So what
Yeah.
he sought to do, and we presented this to Merck February 10th, 2016. And so what it was, the purpose of the meeting was to introduce a drug, the ubiquitous cancer therapy. It says Omnitura introduce Anustat, the ubiquitous cancer therapy, which is ready for licensing and joint phase 2B development, meaning we were going to Merck because we invited them to consider to take the lead to accelerate this to the maximum number of unmet medical needs. So what we were doing, we also introduced Anustat synergistic combination with other drugs already on the market. Introduce Anustat for autoimmune and neurodegenerative disease, the MECFS I was working on and actually cured from 2006 to 2011. And I will say cured, and this is the problem, because curative strategies exist. And we're taught to say, oh, you're never cured. You're always sick. You always live in fear. It'll come back. And we keep testing and putting that fear instead of having the confidence that our God has given us true healers who can heal, and that we can learn from the drugs we used and how they helped a few, but not the many. And so Jim saw that, and he was a brilliant man, Jim Dow. He actually, I believe, invented a kind of microscope to study, even a kind of electron microscope, seeing energetics. A microscope sees 10 to the minus 6, sees cells. Everybody's looked at the onion cell. A dark field microscope only sees red blood cells and parasites, things that glow in the dark, like green fluorescent protein in a firefly. We see color in nature, and every organism has that. We have a red tide here in Ventura, and it got to me a little bit because I live on the water. So when we think about nature, so all he basically said was, there's this pharmacological paradigm doesn't work. So what we're going to create is a smart pharmacological paradigm, combination therapy for cancer. So what I wanted to do for your gym is simply put the botanicals to it, because you mentioned, and the other energetic therapies, and use the drugs as low dose as possible. Hit the pathways of pathogenesis and protect the pathways where a drug will cause dose limiting injury. So since 1980 at the National Cancer Institute at Fort Detrick in Frederick, Maryland, I developed the botanicals and accelerated the developed the manufacturing of the pathogens. So unwittingly, I grew the viruses that the government, and this is what Gallo, Fauci, Baltimore, the heads of this is all in our book, Ending Plague, which we play on X Spaces, which the ODM, the On Demand Education Marketplace, has reserved. And I play all the way back to books like Emerging Viruses in 1962. I play Hillary Johnson, who wrote the foreword to our first book, Plague, because there are different pathogens and they hit different pathways. And the government was actually what our corrupt criminal, what do they call that? Medical industrial complex was doing, starting with David Baltimore in 1962, was the gatekeepers of science. The heads of the journals would get the papers to review, and they'd see them coming through and they'd reject them, send them back for more information because they could almost see it. And then they'd go back and they'd put a chimeric in, let's just say a pseudouridine, or change one base pair, put a little wobble into it in order to be able to patent it and get a Nobel Prize. And David Baltimore did that with reverse transcriptase. And I played that chapter in Luc Montagnier's chapter in Ending Plague. That was chapter 5 in our latest book club, which was last Wednesday, whatever the date was, 26, 7, 8. I don't know. 8. So 28. So that was critically important to hear, because that book was published on or about August 1st of 2021. And the real Anthony Fauci wasn't even out yet, which is critically important in a God world. So you see what Jim Dow and we presented in 2009 in April to Fort Detrick's DARPA. Ooh, they didn't even have BARDA then. DARPA. Oh, so we sat there and we showed you the disease engine, and you can post all of this and we can talk in great deal. We told you that we could create synergistic combination with current standard of care therapies on legacy drugs and next generation targeted drugs, that these combinations could also be patentable for the company. This was Merck, blockbuster drug candidates. And the current CEO of this company was from J&J. This is 2016. We met in 2017. So I was understandably excited because I also showed a PowerPoint, and with that, Stephanie Seneff had been working with us in Autism One conferences, all of which back to 2002 will now be loaded on the ODM platform, so that people can see and the legacies of those like Jeff Bradstreet, like Timothy Cunningham, the people who were murdered, the sacrifice of Brian Hooker, Andy Wakefield, Bobby Kennedy spoke at these meetings. There was a study in corruption, which was the Autism One meeting in May in Chicago of 2016. And so this was October, and we were sometime the next year in Dallas, and when we met, and there I was showing the IAOMT, oral medicine and toxicology. I was showing beautiful Dr. Noenschwinder, and the data from this PowerPoint, and I will email you the CNS in the brain, because you can see what we can do here now is give the drug companies the opportunity to combine a botanical adjuvant in a liquid or drink form. You drink that, then you take your pill, not an injection or an infusion at high dose. Because you see, the problem is these drugs aren't bioavailable in nature, because nature makes different antiviral compounds. So the salicylate family, aspirins, come from that form of pain relief, comes from willow bark and in the family of bark tree oils. And so all I'm showing you is my first love, which was botanical, using botanicals. And then we move into things like the endocannabinoid system, which is your God-given dimmer switch on inflammation, because you need a little inflammation. You can't cut all the oxidative stress. You create another issue. And we learn that when we use the various classes, whether it be the doxorubicins, the daunorubicins, the oxaliplatins, the cisplatin. See, you're hearing their family of drugs, and oxaliplatin had less neurotoxicity than some of the cisplatins. So they're platinum analogs. But we also see there how the heavy metals cause neuropathies. How do you fix that? Well, there's a family of plants, the green tea catechins, but not all the catechins. So you can't just drink green tea. So I think you're hearing me when you think of all the things you and Jim threw at it. If you didn't know this pathway, and you didn't know this because it was censored, and what Merck,
Right.
J&J, the government, DARPA, and every pharmaceutical company did with this was they made their new patented drugs. By changing the base pairs that God gave you to, and each culture has a different response and level of response. We don't drink vitamin D, we make it. Do we eat it? Yes, we do. Where do we eat it? Bee pollen. Bee pollen. Not the stuff you put in the store that has no activity, that you irradiated. We need living food, powdered foods, not pills. And see, the nutraceutical industry is doing what the pharmaceutical industry did now on overdrive, since they captured us all. And it's a capturing of the mind that somehow we can fix it. Well, we can't fix it. When we made our plants GMO, God didn't need help. Genetically modified food is against God. Don't eat it. Starbucks coffee is battery acid. Go buy a black cup of coffee and put it in one of their paper cups and set it on your kitchen counter, and don't leave it in your car, because what'll happen when you wake up in the morning is the cup will disintegrate.
Oh, goodness.
And it'll be all over the floor of your car if you forgot it. So this is what is our frustration, and I think our mutual frustration is the solutions were there. And now we all appreciate, because of COVID, that was the exact goal. You remember from pandemic indoctrination when Melinda Gates sat there and said, let's get the doctors and nurses, they deserve it. Give them the shots first, because you're in the face of the patient and you'll kill the patient. It's called nosocomial spread. These things don't go person to person, at least not easily. You lived with Jim. I live with my David. My David got it, but he didn't die because he listened to his wife at least occasionally. So our God gave us everything we needed. And it's funny when you see what it takes to kill you. I mean, you and I both watched it. We're
Right.
strong. Look at the poisoning of chemotherapy. It's battery acid, and we drink it and call it coffee. So we
Yeah.
poison our food, we poison our water, we poison our soil, we poison our air. And yet, for the most part, we're still here. Yeah, we lost a lot of people. And my passion right now is to make sure everybody knows of this. You know why? Because this can still be done. The data still exists. The clinical trial still exists. I can get you, we need $80 million. We being, I don't even work for them. I've asked what's the Jerry Norskog, we don't even work for him. Do you think the government could do the right thing and fund the company that did the wrong thing? Well, no, they can't. And why can't they? Because they're liable. This is intellectual property theft. You stole our work and you used it to poison the people. It's all right here. So how do I know Mpox with a capital M? Don't call it monkey, because the
Oh, no.
monkeypox came from the Vero monkey kidney cells. The capital M is manufactured. That's a very different pox when you look at it on your skin, because it's part HIV, part Borrelia, Lyme, and HIV always was. Lyme disease always was. The neurodegenerative piece, G protein, 32 base pairs in one variant of HIV that they constructed. That nature pops out the sequences, God, so you live. So these things don't evolve to kill people after the first round, as the beautiful Dolores Cahill said in the beginning. If you ever want her, and I hope we still talk to her again. It's been a while for me with anybody, because we were out there in 2020. We never gave up. I'll never give up again. We know, look, I know all of it, and I could show you how to do it. And now all we need is a manufacturing plant, which we have, and all we need, and several of them. We have packaging data, like instead of using alcohol extracts, these were tea extracts. They won't get you everything. Jim Dow wouldn't go anywhere near the endocannabinoid system, because we can't even get our churches to understand cannabis is not marijuana. And they fooled you too if you took cannabis and you think it's a drug and you think it ever killed somebody. So this is the problem, because, and then when people were dying in COVID, and some of us went into churches and used cannabis to cure them, the corrupt hospitals killed them, giving them a curative strategy. They were fine. And then they came back and killed them and said, you did it, and then our churches, created conflict, division. No, if you don't know what you're talking about, shut up. Wait on
Yeah.
God. Be quiet. Learn. We've had these things on our website. It's in all our books. And it's the censorship. So it's the censorship that stops us, because we can talk to each other, and it's very important, these meetings. And when you see something, I always say, wait a minute, say that again, because I remember. And that's why I just like with dear Jim, with dear Sheila Ely, they murdered her. They're murdering the African Americans. So I also sent you, and if you didn't get it, I will send it again, a
Yeah. And I'll
paper,
make sure we have links
a,
to those too.
yeah, a paper for this conversation that goes all the way back to 2009. And it was submitted a month before our science paper, or what it was, the shills who revealed our science paper, John Coffin. Oh, John Coffin, look up who he is. He reviewed our science papers. So did Jonathan Stoy, Fat Boy Stoy of the UK. So this was a collaboration between the UK and the US. And what was the data in the US from Stefan AMS, a colleague of ours at the National Cancer Institute, when I led the Laboratory of Antiviral Drug Mechanism and beyond. And this paper says tumor immunobiological differences in prostate cancer between African American and European American men. It was the first variant of XMRV, the first infectious molecular clone VP62, didn't hurt anybody. Which was what Derisi and Silverman said, we have a prostate cancer cure because this virus caused prostate cancer. They made a synthetic infectious molecular clone based only on the spike protein, based only on the surface unit or the envelope unit. All three things mean spike. So your government keeps changing the word, especially what they put on the TV screen. So, and Stefan, my friend Stefan is an author on that paper, the last author, which is a senior author, and it came from Maryland. Ooh, Maryland, gotcha. Because you knew exactly how if you changed a spike protein and crippled a protein called RNase-L, one single nucleotide, one base pair change. If you changed R462Q, arginine to glutamic acid, the phagocytosis, the stem cell macrophage that gobbles up that family of pathogens from your X chromosome, say, go after that one. It's that parasite. Then you gobble up the virus, which is not a parasite. A virus is an obligate parasite, because a parasite that's robbing oxygen from the blood cell turns on your fire trucks on your X chromosome and says, go get that one. And so that one, we make 10 to the 9th blood cells every day. And we make 10 to the minus 9 nanobot. Minus 9 nano is 10 to the not minus 9 is nanometer. A virus is 50 to 100 nanometers. An exosome is 50 to 100 nanometers. Is it my virus? Is it my fire trucks to the fire? It's not. It's not a virus. It's another kind of parasite robbing oxygen. Then it won't have a spike protein or a surface unit on my so we on my virus. So we understand and understood. I'm showing you, it gets hotter and hotter. Here's your tumor versus your non-tumor, and here's your high Gleason score tumor. So we knew exactly why Black men got more aggressive prostate cancers. Who was Ronnie Ely? He was like my David. He was lieutenant in the Coast Guard. What did Burks and Redfield do in the 90s? Armed with this information, because I worked in the biological response modifiers program as a kid, while we cured AIDS and cancer, that program, that translational research program at Fort Detrick that had doctors, nurses, PhDs, MDs, NDs, chiropractors, PharmDs, nurse practitioners, nurses, and little old technicians like me. And we worked together, and bam, in 5 years with Bruce Lipton, Candace Burt, Luke Montagne, Frank Rossetti, right there in that program that nobody knew about, because the Gallows and the Faucis were fighting between the president of France and Ronald Reagan, our country, to get credit and money for the test to decide whether it was Paris AIDS, where it was LAV, lymphadenopathy. When you get a swollen lymph gland, notice they didn't take out, thank God they didn't take out the lymph nodes of Jim, or did they? Usually it's only women, they take the lymph nodes. No.
They did.
Yeah, so that then he couldn't send the fire trucks to the fire because you couldn't get there from here. So then the brain can't tell the bone marrow or the liver what to do, and it drives the things. But you see, you don't have to understand that But now what Bobby Kennedy and Trump both know, Bobby knew a long time ago, as we know from the book of our forward, Ending Plague, because he kept talking to me, Judy, I don't understand. Judy, I don't understand. And so we started writing Plague of Corruption when I met Brian Hooker, which was on or about August 29th. Let's see, right around now, or 31st. And it was a meeting in Studio City, California in 2014. Well, I was still under the 5-year kidnapping, silencing, jailing, whichever way you want to call it. I had a leg band on and I could talk to nobody but my husband and my lawyer. But the book Plague was in press. And so therefore I thought, well, okay, I'll go. Kent Heckenlively was my lawyer. And so he said, Judy, go to the meeting and meet Brian Hooker. And I said, okay, then I'll do it. And so one of my lawyers. And so I went, and because it was a short drive, and I was scared to death because it's the first time I'd been on. And I was afraid they were going to kill my husband. I left him at home. That was the threat when he ransomed me out of jail. We know the whole story now, and we can see how God wins. And usually for me now, it's only tears of joy, because even my husband, it's like, oh man, you fooled me. It's like, because husbands and wives has to keep things from each other because they know things, and they know we're each on our individual path. And God knows this is what Mickey Willis did for me, because I was pretty angry when Robert Malone had stolen all this. DARPA handed and BARDA handed it all to Robert Malone. And Clay Clark showed it that Labor Day weekend of 2022, a year after the first time I'd ever been back to Tahoe. And I was with a friend, one of our friends, our family friends from Carlsbad, whose wife was murdered by chemotherapy. But they're experimenting on our people now as we speak. On African Americans. Okay, you didn't get them all, Deborah Birx and Robert Redfield. You injected the military with HIV. So when did Sheila Ely's son get injured? On her birthday, August 2nd, 2000.
All right. It was her birthday.
I was at her beautiful funeral. But, and I'm like, and we knew this a long time ago with respect to the cancer. And we knew it was going to eventually get her, just like mine will get me. And, I have esophageal cancer, precursor Barrett's esophagus. So this week was a tough week, because it's like, oh man, I got to stop this. Because when your brain works and you're on fire, your inflammation, your endocannabinoid system, you're not sleeping, you're not doing anything. I usually just call Ed Group and say, okay, I outkicked my coverage, honey. Well, I'm a football fan. My G is either Godspeed Church or Green Bay Packers.
It's a
Anyway,
good one.
I thought Wisconsin, and last night was appropriate. So you can see how I think. My clothes always mean something. But so it's to remember, because our immune system will always remember. And so, Ronnie Ely didn't get hurt by those shots, which they injected in the military. HIV. They injected. So for Deborah Birx to sit there and say it's similar to HIV, no, it is HIV, and you injected it in everybody. But what were they missing? They were missing the XMRVs. SARS-CoV-2 is not a coronavirus. It's an XMRV. It's xeno, it's foreign. And in fact, every vaccine has been an XMRV. They're foreign, monkey, mouse, kidney, aborted fetal, because you injected them. If you expose them to your skin in nature, it doesn't matter if they're mouse, monkey, cow, pig, horse, bird,
whatever,
or manufactured. So you see, they know right now we cured monkeypox. That's easy. And we showed you the little boy at the Clay Clark tour, and that was our book Plague. It said it was restoring faith in the promise of science was the subtitle of Plague of Corruption. And Kent wrote it this way. He said, restoring faith in science. And Frank Rossetti, who's not a Christian, or not at least ever said it out loud, I know what he does. So Frank Rossetti, my mentor, and the guy that discovered all of it. He taught all of us, along with Candace Pert, Luc Montagnier. He's barely alive, but he's still hanging in there. They killed all of us. Joe Oppenheim, it's hard for me to exist. Candace Pert, first in 2013, because she defended us even after we discovered the cause and cure and diagnostic strategy for which variant causes the neuroimmune AIDS. It's not all neuro AIDS. They had to put a 32 base pair back in that species of virus. So they just made a new clone and said, here we are. And the delivery agent was a tick because you had to add Borrelia burgdorferi. That came out of Lyme, Connecticut. Out of Cold Spring Harbor, where we were bioweaponing up there in New York. And I try to help my friend Alex Jones understand, Obama and Fauci killed those kids at Sandy Hook as much as I'm standing right here. They knew Adam Lanza and his mother had Lyme disease, but what were they? Crazy. 2016, 2017. Obama is a murderer, premeditated murder. And we see that as the regimes continue on. African Americans are not Hindu Jamaicans or any other black colored person walking across. We are Cherokees. We are Native Americans, whether it's from the Indians in Mexico all the way up to the Alaskans. Yeah, Alaskans. How did they kill the Alaskans in the Spanish flu? They had to have a little co-pathogen. And this is the book by John Cullen, that John Cullen introduced me to, by John M. Barry, called The Great Influenza. They put asbestos on their face, a mask.
A mask.
A mask. Those masks were so loaded, the paper ones. And we played, I won't go over it because we played in that last X Space book club, the chapter epilogue, Doing the Right Thing in a World Gone Mad. So like you and me, yes, I get my own personal pity party sometime. And then I just do a little bit of a toxitexting, we call it. Because yes, I'm intoxicated. I'm upset. And that's the only time I text Rob McCoy. And you can't, I'm upset and I'm crying and my finger won't hit the screen and my texts look crazy anyway. And so he's like, Judy, are you intoxitexting? I said, well, I'm not drunk, but I'm clearly not sober because I'm so angry and crying that I'm shaking and I can't hit the button right. And somebody better do something because like my Cherokee mother and grandfather, I'm homicidal. I'm not suicidal. And what you have to do is help me keep my powder dry, because otherwise I'm going to explode. I can't watch one more dear person like Sheila Ely be murdered. And that's where Mickey Willis said, Judy, I guess I thought you really believed in divinity. And I went to him and I went, I do.
Right.
Well, and he did that. He laughed.
I tell you, it's like we go through these tragedies. You lost your husband. I mean, that's half of you. And, I lose Jim. And I tell people, I don't see how people get through life if they don't have a higher power, if they don't have a faith in God. And we have to keep going back to that because, am I mad at God occasionally? Yes, I am. Do I not understand his plan? No, I don't understand his plan, but I'm not supposed to really understand that. I'm just supposed to keep going and moving forward and finding the good and all the bad. And like I said, maybe Jim's, death is because, we have to join forces. We have to, again, continue to expose the medical, industrial complex in this industry. And we have to join forces. We have to support you, Judy, because you can't do it all by yourself. You have to know that there's people that love you. There's people that support you. There's people that encourage you. You've got cheerleaders out there. We're all here to help you. And, and we take that and we move forward because we are up against an evil force. Because I mean, my husband Jim was very intelligent, and
Yeah,
he
it was.
everybody, informed consent, that's risks, benefits, and alternatives. And that was, when he got into the whole childhood vaccine, corruption there. And like I said, I look back at what we went through in this cancer industry. He's a brilliant man that fell to the fear and the lies from the allopathic oncologists.
Right.
We put way too much trust in them, and like I said, looking back, the informed consent, the
Wasn't
risks,
there.
no. If he was aware of the risks, he wouldn't have done 3 rounds of FU5 chemotherapy,
Yeah,
30 days.
5FU.
Yeah,
It's interesting.
FU.
You should say 5FU. Yeah,
Yeah,
and
and that's
they
what they
used to
call it.
laugh. They used to
Yeah,
laugh about that. 5
yeah,
fluorouracil, deadly
yeah,
fluoride, deadly.
yeah,
And now, what do you have in all those shots?
yeah,
Pseudouridine. So the
yeah.
5FU with a uracil and the
Yeah,
pseudouridine are going to go bam and turn
yeah.
the flame on. And so just yesterday,
Mhm.
I was with a woman and they with pancreatic cancer, 5FU, they call it full fox. And what I said to her was, and to that allopathic oncologist, and we put her back together. And I said to her, okay, I'll please just use the oxaliplatin. Take the 5FU away, because she had 10 shots, and then she had the COVID shots from 2013 that gave her breast cancer.
Oh,
Every shot including after hepatitis B, but importantly, that shot, hepatitis B, whenever they
mhm.
went synthetic and not from blood. The first hepatitis B was from other pooled human serum. But when they went to manufactured to synthetic, that was your first COVID shot. Because that's a shot in which it would have not have infected anybody ordinarily. So yes, there is no informed consent. They won't even hear of a naturopathic or those people all working together like the biological response modifiers program, because they're paid not to heal you. And yet this is the criminal aspect of it, that I sat there and gave her informed consent. She's sobbing. And I did it 2 months ago, and I left for a month, and I went back yesterday, and she was in bad shape. And I'm like, what changed? You were fine when I left. Your PET scan had resolved. They read a PET scan and said she had clots in her lung and lung tumors. And she did not. She was COVID shot. Then she had a mini stroke, the Mitch McConnell look. That is not a clot. That is not, that's the Mitch McConnell look. That's a myotonic seizure. And they won't even see it because they're paid not to. And they
Right,
derided the naturopath that tried to help her. They stopped the chiropractic that tried to help her. Of course, I don't even mention what I'm trying to do. It's just like, hey,
right,
just
yeah.
you come here. But what I said to her, and she's sobbing, and I'm like, look, and this started in April. And I said, okay, do you believe in God? Well, of course I do. And this is what I told Mickey Willis. Now, when Mickey Willis said, Judy, I thought you really believed in divinity. I went, I do. And she was sobbing, I was screaming. And he said, and he laughed. And I'm like, well, why always me? We cured the damn thing a long time ago, and it's not a me
Yeah,
thing. There's no I in Jesus or team. And so I got over it within he made me laugh. Mickey always makes me laugh. And he said, because if you did believe in divinity, you'd believe when the universe was formed, David and Shannon's lives were planned. The day you're born, the day you're died, and what you're going to die, and what you do in between, and whether or not you live forever, because you truly live through the people who remember not the, chemo poison or that instant of fear, but that God was showing the rest of the world through you. You had to take that suffering, and Sheila taught me so much. So I'll keep fighting about this, and just that's, I was blessed that I was on that coast so I could go to her memorial and people could drive me her funeral, actually, not a memorial. And because we can look at it in retrospect when the pain gets worse. So Mickey said, so go have a conversation and figure it out. Don't be angry at Robert Malone until you sit in the room. Well, I sat in the room and I got him to admit, who's your daddy? Well, I knew his lineage was David Baltimore, so I know that when they handed him all those grants that they showed on Clay Clark's show in 2022, that was giving him all of genius as a capture manager. When I saw that, I said, Frank, I text Frank. He was still speaking to me then, or at least he was still communicating, because they cut off all communication with us because Frank would always come back to me. As angry as he was with me, he was like, and see, when we love each other or respect each other, even if we don't understand the behavior, we let them in the room. We forgive them. That's our calling. And we're like, and we say, explain it to us. And so, you and I both have to. That's why I say that at the end of pandemic. Forgive yourselves and forgive each other. It wasn't up to you. It wasn't up to me.
Yeah.
And so my husband was murdered, but thanks to the love of his son, which was the thorn in my side for our entire marriage, his sweetest young son, I got in that hospital room. And I was there the last 3 days, patting his head and rubbing his tummy. He came back to life, and it was like, whoa, that was pretty good. And it's just like, and the whole nursing station of the hospital came in and said he was dead. And I'm like, yeah, I know, right? Yeah. But Jesus showed up, and I didn't say anything. They just said, what'd you do? It's a miracle. And I said, pat his head and rub his tummy. He was scared and hungry. So I'd done this our entire marriage, because he had COPD forever, and you'll hyperventilate, and then you can't breathe. And so hyperventilation is CO2. Think about just nature. Why would we hyperventilate and put CO2 back in through that mask in only 2 breaths? So we can, if we can start saying things like on podcasts like yours, and I really appreciate this, because we can talk through the pain with what we've learned and the suffering, and the tears end up being tears of joy. And so then you see other things and you hear other things, but you see that Jesus was there all along. And we're all going to die. But my husband wasn't supposed to die November 27th when they kidnapped him into that hospital, or November 30th or 29th when they called me in the morning, which they hadn't called me all night. And I appreciate why, and I won't tell the details. And finally, Lance texts me, and he said, Judy, where are you? He's calling for you. And I text him back, and I was on the phone with the lawyers, including, Jim, who ultimately got to Bobby Kennedy to help us, and so, and that's the angels in the God in all things. So I said, I'm on the phone, and it was about 7 a.m, trying to keep them from murdering and I used 3 F words in 3 different ways. Father was the last.
The last one.
Was the noun. The adjectives and the adverbs were Fauci. Anyway.
Yes.
And so we and Lance didn't do anything. He didn't get mad or anything else. I shouldn't use his name, but he's a hero, Professor Lance Nolde. And so he said, get down here. He's calling for you. I said, where are you? And he said, the hospital. And I'm thinking to myself, to get in there. But I realized it didn't matter. I jumped in there. Okay, then. He said, Derek's out front. Derek's out front, the older son, and he's waiting for you. Well, Derek's wife was murdered. Cancer therapy gone wrong, just like Jim. And he had a 9-year-old and a 4-year-old. And his wife was murdered not 2 months earlier. So he couldn't go in the hospital because he couldn't take it. It was too much. And
Yeah.
so, but he stayed out to help me, and then he passed it off to his son. But he did stay in, and he listened to Nurse Kevorkian try to get us to kill him,
That's
which,
Kevorkian.
well,
Oh.
Nurse Ratchet was in there on Sunday, and I ripped her a new one through the phone, because David called once. He only called once, and he was going, and I was so mad. And I said, honey, you don't have
Yeah.
COVID. She was in the background saying, you'll have COVID. You'll have COVID. You're going to die. You'll never register. And I said,
Oh,
honey, you're okay. You're okay. You're okay. And I used to do that. You're okay. You're okay. You're okay. Just pat his chest. So he would, because David could breathe without breathing. He'd had COPD so long. His heart would
yeah.
start. His resting pulse was like 39. So he'd go into
Wow.
bradycardia very quickly, very quickly. And you had to, so I'd always have to wake him up. I kept my hand right there as he slept most of
Yeah.
the time. And so he, from the time I met him 21 years earlier, he was sicker when I met him than when he died, which is funny. I'm sorry. And so but it was all this COVID stuff, and God knew that. And God knew who his, what happened with his first wife. The first XMRV was the psychosis. She was certified paranoid schizophrenic. When the kids were like, his oldest set of kids were like 2 years old. But David took all of them because he had to care for them and was the Mr. Mom.
Yeah.
And he took the mother with them so that they would always be with their mother, knowing it wasn't her fault,
Yeah.
in what happened. We still are family. It's tough to deal with because she's effing
Yeah.
nuts. But other than that, we love her anyway.
But make it
That's what we're
work.
called to do. So
Mhm.
I said to Nurse Ratchet in the room, because I knew he wasn't breathing. He was in trouble. And I said,
Yeah.
after I said, you're okay, you're okay, you're okay. And I said, no remdesivir, no intubation. But what they did, instead of intubating, they put 100% oxygen on a BiPAP machine and forced it
The
in
body.
his lung on the
Oh.
BiPAP. Oh, and burned
Yeah.
out, and that man, but he didn't breathe. He didn't breathe. He didn't breathe. So
Yeah.
until his heart dropped into bradycardia, then the bradycardia, then the alarms would go on, and they'd say he stopped breathing in the middle of the night. And I'm like, all you have to do is tap him. All you have to do is love him, pat his head. He'll come back. He
Yeah.
does that all the time.
Yeah.
When you're used to it. So I screamed at Nurse Ratchet, and I said, and Nurse Ratchet, you better. I said, honey, Jim's going to be there soon. We'll get you out of there. We'll get you out of there. We'll be there soon. We'll be there. That was our lawyer. Sorry. I love you, Jim. You can
Yeah.
take his last name out of it. And I said, Jim's on the phone. And I said, we got you. I said, we got you. And he'll be there in an hour. And this was Sunday afternoon, and they'd taken him on Saturday. And the minute they grabbed him, they called him David Mikovits. Well, his name wasn't Mikovits. His name was Nolde. And we've got
Interesting.
premeditated murder by the
Oh.
hospital and one Tony Fauci and Governor Newsom. Because
Yeah.
David Nolde and Judy Mikovits Nolde filed a lawsuit for wearing the mask in somebody with cancer, which nobody ever does. The
Yeah.
patient doesn't wear the mask, and the doctor wears only a true 47.com silver copper mask for all variants, for every doctor that injected themselves with anything. You better hear me well, because we're coming after you. And the
Yeah.
government forced these masks on these doctors, and the doctors were killing the patients. The doctors were spreading the COVID. The nurses were spreading the COVID, because
Yeah.
SARS-CoV-2 was never COVID. They made it
Right.
in 2004. The monkey virus they injected in the monkey cell line. It was
Hmm.
part monkey, part human, part mouse. That was
Yeah.
SARS-CoV-2. The paper is Moore et al. From
Mhm.
2004. I'll put that in your show notes. The
Yeah.
Flunami variant is Reed et al. They made that in the military too, also in 2004. How do we
Yeah.
kill them with the influenza? How are we mimicking 1918? How do
Yeah.
we mimic Borrelia and neuroimmune disease because Luc Montagnier was interested
Mhm.
in the bacteria, in the parasites, and not the viral component. He was always more interested in that, and you'll
Yeah.
hear that later on. So it's pretty cool if you just think and you can get in a thinking space and then just keep moving forward. But sometimes I have to do as I did on Clay Clark those 2 times when I went after Malone. I did it last week, a couple weeks ago. I went after him again. So every now and again, I got to go after you because that's how life is. And then the rest of the time,
on their toes. You got to keep them on their toes. You
well,
really
yeah,
do.
because
Yeah.
I could say anything I want, right?
Yeah.
And I'm
Yeah.
crazy, and that's why I'm still going to say to Mickey Willis, because Mickey calmly said to me, after we got over of course I believe in divinity and the little pity party, and he said, well, you know what you have to do. We're not bad actors, so just by thinking, you know what, Robert Malone's not a bad guy. I think I know where he came from. I'm ready to kind of think, he was tricked into something he didn't believe, and he didn't realize he was tricked, but now he's captured. And that's actually what he was listed at on the grants from DARPA and BARDA as capture
Yeah.
manager, as capture manager.
Yeah.
And I said
Interesting.
to Frank Rossetti, WTF? What's
Yeah.
that? What's a
Yeah.
capture man? That's not a principal investigator. That's not your work. No, his job was to capture our brains into thinking we had this, we had this, we had this. But what I ultimately did that I had no idea, we were scared to death going there. And the cowardice is having the conversation. The cowardice is not getting angry at him and praying about it. I mean, we listened to every word he said as Johanna and Rich drove me across the country. And okay, how are we going to do this? How are we going to meet with Jill and Malone? Because got to get the wife out of the room, because I know who she is. I saw her
Yeah.
lie on Children's Health Defense from Hawaii. I watched what they did on that beach, and I was fighting mad in April of 2022 when I saw that, or May of 2022 when I saw that, because understandably it had only been a few months since David's passing. I couldn't even use the death certificate. I couldn't get his retirement. I couldn't do anything because I knew it was fraud. I'm like, nope, not going there. I'll fight to the end. That man lived out. He finished well. A couple weeks before that, he was kind of a little bit sick. Yeah, that COPD thing. There was a lot of Santa Ana winds. And I said, honey, how'd you like the sermon today? It was November 7th of 2021. Rob's sermon was on 2 Kings. I'll find it for you, and we can put the God in the show note, because Rob McCoy and Godspeak Church are critical to our country. And every single person I've mentioned has been, except Malone and Trump, has been on stage at Godspeak Church. Mickey Willis, G. Edward Griffin, Riz Islam. So ask yourself, Peter McCullough, Simone Gold, I can go on and on. A lot of posts, Del Bigtree over and over again, Bobby Kennedy twice, 3 times. We did Autism 1 from Godspeak Church in 2021 because there was nowhere else they would let us do it. September of 2021, Kent Hecken Liveland, because we knew the autistic kids, the kids with these neuroimmune diseases with genius, we knew they were at risk. So we were trying to provide solutions. We had the mask, the beautiful Sharon Whiteley. Her books are all about grounding. The Old Girls Network. If you could get her on your show, it would be fabulous, because she can tell you all about grounding and those beautiful TRU47.com masks, and clothing to stop the 5G, to stop the heavy metals, sprays and nasal sprays that you can spray with different forms of essential oils. So solutions. And she called me, like a lot of people did, and said, Judy, I got this for you. And the church, she would donate them to the church, like Cardio Miracle does, like Global Healing does. So they donate them because my job is to teach, do what I did since 1980, which was since the biological response pyrophone. See, on a foundation, which botanicals for which poison. I own the patent for the PCR for all things COVID. I own the patent for PCR and the cures, and Genius is part of it. And so these are still available to the U.S. taxpayer in all of them, and instantly Merck and every other company can bow to Jesus and say, okay, you're either guilty of murdering everybody or you're going to do this and you're going to move forward and you're going to give everybody the opportunity to have this. And we're going to put all hands on deck and we're going to bring everybody together because it's a playbook now. It's a smart platform, as I read to you. And the smart platform stands for, Jim Dow's clever. I'm not really good at words, as you can tell. I see cells differently. But the smart platform is like the smart foundational safe, synergistic is smart, the S, multivalent mechanism, hit many sites, several pathways, adaptive arsenal. We can adapt it to any bioweapon. I don't care if it's Mbox or M whatever, because the capital M is coming from the COVID shots. Manufactured in it's not monkey, don't be confused. And they do it to you once they use monkey. And all the rest of the FDA, WHO is the capital M, because they own it now. Yeah. And they don't own all of us yet. Okay, adaptive, regulation, restoration to normal, R. And T, therapy, treatment. It's both a prevention strategy, that's the smart platform, and all you have to do is do a systems biology, AI, they just changed it to systems biology, analyze characteristics, look at all the genetic mutations, the gene sequencing, look at the chronic disease information status, this slide, then go ahead and stratify the patient with improved and more complete knowledge, use precision targets to improve signal to noise, all biological pathways, so you just don't kill everything. It's not cytotoxic chemotherapy systemically applied. It's applied right here with a red light or a PEMF around it to warm, to do it with a botanical adjuvant that allows you to use the tiniest, like a laser, and go bing like a sniper. So the sniper meets people in the field that are camouflaged in order to do his job and sneak in there and go undetected. Yeah. Otherwise, you just bolus dose at everything. Yeah. So this, and see the therapy, the patient situation, pre-cancer disease, early cancer stage disease, late cancer. Then so for the pre-cancer, all you need's supplements. All you need is Cardio Miracle and dimethylglycine. Those are the foundational minerals that run all these reactions, light or anything, down to the electron level. And local therapies, and from plants, not synthetic. It's got to be from plants. That's why Cardio Miracle and the Nutritional Frontiers, because they're powdered. They're lyophilized, so they reconstitute in a shape like the plant behind me. So local therapies, surgery or radiation, plus the adjuvant, plus the botanical support, and it even comes in the mouth microbiome, which is totally different than the microbiome all the way down. So yes, you cut it out, but you have to open the highway again. You don't cut out the lymph nodes, because the lymph nodes are where the viruses are coming from. Right. So we've destroyed women. We don't cut out the cervical lymph nodes in men for prostate cancer. Why? Because we know we cured prostate cancer with low-dose Anistat. What did the government do in 2019? What did the criminal FDA do? They patented something called Nubeqa. And it's and Lynparza, which hits an endogenous cannabinoid a couple years earlier, after 2016, in order to use new drugs and everything you see, to patent them, to patent. So Nubeqa, they didn't patent this, which would cost each health insurance and your government Medicare $500 a month to put the all the plants together, the botanical adjuvant specific for an individual. Think about it as a Keurig machine. I could put the oils in the glass in the machine and mix the oils and hand it to you when you come in every week. And it can change weekly. I mean, I can put the lotion on your skin. I can use ozone in different ways, like a Hocket or just literally a simple ozonator to do mouth instead of any kind of, we can combat any mercury, which makes things worse and stops the functioning of the brain. So you see, when we look at how to do everything and keep the thing from, even if it's in the lymph nodes, you don't take it out. Your lymphatics, you support the liver because that's where it's going. You support the
Right.
bone marrow because that's where it's going. And when you do the liver and the bone marrow and you support them, and this is a whole cleanse protocol that Ed Group and Healing for the Ages artist group, Ely
Right.
and
Yes.
Jana
Yes.
Schmidt. I
Mhm.
mentioned earlier that bee pollen, bee products, bees, honey. What did they try to take out? Our bees. Now we're
Right.
releasing mosquitoes because the ticks didn't work very well, and we caught that
Oh,
lie. I
yeah.
just love catching them because it's like, oh, that's stupid. Because what do ticks do?
Yeah.
They bite animals, not humans.
Yeah.
They live on dogs. So they
Yeah.
were Tony Fauci in 2010, the retrovirologist Robin Weiss, they were trying to get contagious cancer in dogs, lymphoma. What was it? The XMRV. Gotcha. And they had to hit beagles because beagles have more endogenous coronaviruses and humans have more endogenous retroviruses. So they had to pair the coronaviruses with the right retroviruses. So you now know why the Italians got the flu shot made in Derby kidney cell. Ah, that's a dog canine kidney cell line. That's not Vero monkey kidney cell line. So now they know they can make their flu shots and they can do and Prevnar is a flu shot. It's not called a pneumonia shot. Now you'll have
Yeah.
and why would you put 17 different pneumonia causing bacterial pieces on aluminum? Because they never go anywhere and they go in your myofascia, your macrophages, your stem cells, your surveillance, all in the, and they kill you. So it's not rocket science, it's just nature. And so when you speak like this, and I'm delighted that you've allowed me enough time to really I try so hard to convey this. Well, on our website, you'll see that we're looking for investors. The we, and I
Yeah.
will say we, because even though I have absolutely nothing but wallpaper, I was paid by this company, Genius Omnitura, for more than 15 years, since 2006, in stock. And obviously, since they killed the CEO, Jim Dow, March 1st of 2021, because he truly believed that, and I feel bad for him, he truly believed the government would do the right thing, that they would see this is the
Yeah.
solution, that we could shift the paradigm. But now here's the great thing you're doing. We can. It didn't go away. And so
Right.
the beautiful Jerry Norskog is the CEO, a career in J&J. And in 2000, they all did what Chang and Chang did with a company called Pharmanex that's now New Skin. Is there two Chinese guys? And they said, look, we can do this better. And they were right here in California. But then the government does the network marketing BS because you see, then we can only sell to each other. And then we only, there's no way to make money. And the government derides you and they say, oh, that's network marketing. Well, you don't need network marketing because you have freedom from any kind of marketing. You're publishing fraud. FTC. Those aren't public service announcements. Those are poisons and murder and treasonous murder,
Propaganda.
the
Yeah.
propaganda, and every commercial on that TV. Well, that's why we need Bobby Kennedy, RF Kennedy Jr., who saw all of it. Thank God
He
he's so
sees the
brilliant.
corruption.
He's
Yeah.
In all the environmental agencies. And we've
Yes.
got
Yes.
Stephanie Seneff at the FDA, The Toxic Legacy of Glyphosate. We've got
Oh, wouldn't
Dr.
that be?
David Lewis. We've got
Mm-hmm.
Dr. David Lewis, Science for
Yes.
Sale, the
Mhm.
EPA whistleblower from 15 and 16. So we
Yeah.
were all right there, and God knew we'd never give up on each other or God.
Right.
Sometimes, we don't understand and we stay away, but we'll never stop believing in God,
Mm-mm.
and we put our big girl and big boy pants on, and we say, okay, then. And I
Yeah.
just love what Sheila's going to teach us and how we're going to heal our land. Because we can tell Kamala, no, it's not Black Americans, use the right term. It's African Americans.
Yeah.
We're the heritage. We're the sons of Issachar, whether it's Alaska, all of Canada, all the way down on this patent. Canadians, Americans, Chinese, San Diego, right where Robert Malone and the crimes happened in San
Mhm.
Diego, where they
Right.
poisoned our military all the way back to HIV. Because this lymphoma started in the military after Burks and Redfield injected them with AIDS. But what they didn't realize was the polio shots carrying the XMRVs since 1934, since we
Yeah.
passed them through mouse brains, not recognizing a virus that does nothing in mouse and you'd never detect a virus that you can't see until it's a circuit. That sequence means nothing until it replicates. And so
Yeah.
that first chapter 5 of Plague, our first book, Kent Heckenlively, his daughter was severely injured. He never stopped working. I never stopped working to help him. One day he's going to have a conversation and with her, and God knows how working together we are going to heal our land. And
Absolutely.
Interferon, the cover of Time magazine, the beautiful Dr. Aleem Muhammad. I'll get him for your show. Dr. Aleem,
Right.
I call
Mm-hmm.
him. He made the interferon. He can show you how they took it out in the 80s. ABC News, Sam Donaldson, Stu Peters did it in 2022. And I'm sitting backstage going like this. And he's starting to show this film. And he's like, well, Judy's backstage going like this. There's something wrong. And I said, because
What's going on?
that's not what happened. They vilified the Nation of Islam.
Oh,
Does it look like what we did in AIDS? Does it look like what happened in 1968? Because we
yeah.
have interferon, and cow interferon will cure all of this. I could have given Jim, and I'm just, I know God didn't intend it, but it's like, why
Yeah.
doesn't anybody call me? And just like Bobby said the other day, well, I don't pray specifically. I don't pray specifically. And Bobby said in his announcement of joining forces with Trump in the capacity that he is, he
Yeah.
said, I prayed every day for God to use me. And
Right.
I prayed every day for Bobby to humble himself and have a conversation with Trump. But what it really was I prayed every day, conversely, for Trump to humble himself and have a conversation with
With
Bobby.
Bobby.
And what happened? God sent a bullet by his ear.
Yeah. He's like,
So I said
well,
on Clay Clark a
yeah.
week, 2 days before the announcement, I said, well, of course, I prayed for them every day, specifically. Humble yourself, Trump. Talk to the man. Because
Yeah.
what did Trump do? Unknowingly, in Peter Navarro, Trump signed the universal flu vaccine. What does
Right.
that
Well,
mean? But that
you
was
know,
September
yeah.
2019. But Peter kept saying no. Peter didn't even know who Fauci was. So watch our Clay Clark from last week, because
Yeah.
Clay's
I
totally
will.
on it. General Flynn's totally on it. Now
Yeah.
Bobby's totally on it, and we're having fun in Ventura.
Oh, yeah. That's good. That's good. Oh my goodness. I think I could go on 3 more days with you, Judy.
Well, we'll do it
You,
again, sweetie.
yeah, we will. We might have to cut this show into 2 parts. I don't know.
Whatever you like.
It's been so great. I appreciate your input and your knowledge and your determination to keep going. again, that's what we have to do. We have to keep going no matter what, is in front of us. And the other thing that you talked about is we have to love, we have to forgive. There's a lot of people that I'm really mad at, but I have to understand that, God, they do not know what they do not know. And so that's where we come in. And even if it's just one more person that we can help educate, or that we can just open their mind or just plant that seed. And whether we didn't even get to childhood vaccinations, girl, because that's really, that's where we got started. And so
Right. And I think,
yeah,
that's really important. That's
yeah,
why I wanted to start here. And if we
yes,
don't cut it up, it'll be better, because this
yeah,
really was so much more than
yeah,
vaccination. And that's where we've got to appreciate every one of them and use this pattern, because we've got to
yes,
back off trauma that goes. That's why Ed Dowd's book, Cause Unknown,
yes,
we
yes,
made cancer immune therapy.
mhm,
Vaccination is not immunization. If
right,
it's
right,
on the other end of a needle,
yeah,
chemotherapy will never be therapy.
right,
We
right.
must avoid all injections, therapeutic or
Absolutely.
otherwise.
Our bodies were not, God did not make us to have anything injected into us, not a single thing. So,
Or our plants or our animals.
yeah, no, yeah, no, 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 and none of that. But there is, I do hear hope from you, because you haven't given up and you've got all the tools behind you and you've got all the connections and everything. So I will be sure that we post websites and links and everything, and to give you support. And you and we will meet back up, because I want to focus a whole show on the corruption behind the childhood vaccines, because
Okay,
that's a big part of Jim's mission. And
correct.
I
And I
appreciate your.
want to show you how that works with Sheila.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. She's a big part of it. So I appreciate you so much. Have a blessed day, and we will talk again soon. Thank you, Judy.
Okay.